Hello, my friends. We're going to interpret the birth chart of Bob Dylan using vibrational astrology. This is part three in a series of 14 videos. We're assuming you know about harmonic charts. If you don't, I have a link here to a tutorial video on what harmonic charts are and how you interpret them. And also I have a link here at the bottom to the first in this series of 14 videos, and which also has the links to all 14 videos in this series of videos on musicians. Okay, Bob Dylan. Can we find Bob Dylan in his birth chart? Let's think about Bob Dylan. He's generally considered not to have a great voice. He was often rather unpleasant with others, doesn't have the sweetest personality in the world, but his lyrics are very meaningful. He has this kind of honesty and sincerity that wins the hearts of people. So how does this guy get so much star power? He doesn't have the greatest voice in the world. He's not the nicest guy in the world, and everybody's in love with him. It's enough to make you jealous of him. Yeah, how does he do this? What's in his chart that gives him this magic power? So here's his birth chart. When you look at his birth chart, do we see something that would indicate we've got the potential for a superstar here? I don't see anything unusual here, but when we look at these harmonic patterns, what I like to call vibrational patterns, we will see something rather extraordinary that describes who he is. Here's his 11th harmonic chart. Remember in part 2, if you watch part 2 of Aretha Franklin, she has the Venus, Uranus, Pluto, all conjunct in the 11th harmonic. Look at this. In Bob Dylan's chart, he has Venus, Uranus, Pluto, just like Aretha Franklin. Instead of all being conjunct, he's got Uranus, Pluto in the 11th harmonic chart, opposition Venus, and look at the orb of the Venus-Uranus. This is mind-boggling. 6 minutes. Venus is 22 Gemini 50, Uranus is 22 Sag 56. An 8-degree orb. This is really just exact. And Pluto also strongly involved. Venus, Uranus, Pluto. Now maybe it's surprising. You're thinking, maybe you're thinking to yourself, as I did when I looked at this, he's a folk rock singer. I wouldn't necessarily expect him to have this electric power of the 11th harmonic. But let's remember who Bob Dylan is. And listen to some of that music. And some of the things that made him really, really powerful and have such a big effect on people. Listen to this part of the song. So, the point being that these musicians became superstars for many reasons. It wasn't just the right people promoting them at the right time. They have this ability to drive people. And there's a lot of sides to Bob Dylan. He's got his lyrics, his sensitivity, his roots in a more folk style. But what pushed him over the top, one of the things that did to become a superstar was Like a Rolling Stone, songs like that, where the build-up, the climax, and the way that it's done. Many of us, can sing or something, but to get that impact, that right effect, and the strength, the Venus, Uranus, Pluto, and also what we see here is that his transition from folk music to electric, more of a rock style, was almost guaranteed from this Venus, Uranus, Pluto. A lot of people didn't like it when he made that transition from a folk style to a more electric sound. But with the Venus, Uranus, Pluto, it was almost guaranteed to happen. And what happened when he did it, even though it was controversial, it led to his stardom, we could say, or added to his stardom. So he's got the Venus, Uranus, Pluto. Now, but he's also a songwriter, and there's a lot more to Bob Dylan. He's not just a guy who rocks out and so on, nor is Aretha Franklin. It's not just people who just yell and scream. They have a talent for 11th harmonic expression. But what about the songwriting? Where does all this come from? Well, as I mentioned in the introduction to this series, 55, 11 times 5, is very, very common with songwriters. And here we see it. With the songwriting, it's not Venus, Uranus. It's usually Mercury involved with planets. And here we see Mercury, Pluto, Sun, all within 6 degrees. All within 6 degrees. You know, we allow 16-degree orb. Mercury, Pluto, Sun, intense, penetrating, probing, pulling out the dirt that's underneath. You know, his cynicism, you might say, is there. And look what happens also in the 55th. His Venus-Uranus stays within orb. You know, if you study those lessons on the harmonic charts, you know that when there's a very strong aspect, it'll stay within orb in higher harmonics, and Saturn joins it, indicating that there's going to be a change. Whenever you see Saturn-Uranus, there's going to be a real spontaneity to break up what is. This is why he's not a groupie, why he can't buy into just being a goody-goody sort of. He creates a new sound, combines the folk music with the electric, and this is the harmonic 55 of creative, dynamic musical expression. And we have also we have basically two themes here: the Venus, Saturn, Uranus, high creativity and freshness and newness, and then the songwriting ability, which is coming more from the Mercury, Pluto, Sun, and Neptune, is more weakly aspected, still within the 16-degree orb to, well, just barely within 16-degree orb to Mercury, and within orb to Pluto and Sun. So it's really a 4-planet pattern going on here. And again, Neptune joining in is very, very common in not just with musicians, but many areas. So there we have it. And we end up, if you think about his words, here's one of his songs, She Belongs to Me, to go back to more of that folk style and poetry of Bob Dylan. She never stumbles, she's got no place to fall. She never stumbles, she's got no place to fall. She's nobody's child. The law can't touch her at all. So, you know, just the cynicism, the depth of insight. And listen to this one. She wears an Egyptian ring that sparkles before she speaks. She wears an Egyptian ring that sparkles before she speaks. She's a hypnotist collector. You are a walking antique. So here he's taken that ring, shown how it's it's an antique, and that sparkles before she speaks, because when you speak, that's when you convey your soul, your intelligence, your sensitivity, who you are. His way of understanding the human condition. This is Sun, Mercury, Pluto with the Neptune combined with it. And this is another big power of Bob Dylan. So you'll see this 55th harmonic, very strong, and describing the qualities of what the person does. So there's the combination of Bob Dylan. The 55th harmonic plus the 11th harmonic. The guy was a born musician with creativity and sensitivity and depth of insight, all working together and building his career. So that's Bob Dylan. Again, we see these patterns showing up consistently. And next we're going to look at Jim Morrison, will be the 4th part of this series. If you want to continue on to part 4, I've got the link right here. And at the beginning of this video, I have the link to part 1, which has the links to all 14 videos in the series. Thank you very much for listening, my friends. God bless. Namaste.